I'm going to talk a little more about what I've been doing the last few years. Now, I've got to be intentionally vague about the locations and like the company names, so I'm going to call it the bank. Because after my selling phones and I grew to hate it, and you were only one bad sales period away from being run off, I said, I'm going to look for a position with a bank. You've kind of seen a pattern here where nothing I've ever done has ever been good enough or ever been fulfilling or just anything in general. I was meant to be a millionaire is what my dad always says. But through a lucky interview, I interviewed the day before, and the next day they called and I got the job. And let me tell you, stuff like that does not happen. Period. It doesn't happen. Because if you go expecting that at every position after that, which I kind of did, held out hope, it does not happen. You will have to wait, you will wait, and you will wait, and you will wait, and you will wait some more, and you may never hear anything. But I got on there, and this is pre-COVID, so training took a ridiculous amount of time. It took I got hired in September. I don't think I actually sat down with a customer until December, maybe, if not even later than that. And I learned pretty quick that the standards there we were first of the month branch. So that meant we had crowds on the first of the month, and we had the same people coming in month after month. They'd only come in on the first. I wouldn't see them again until the next month, because I had a lady that would come in every single first of the month with debit card issues. I don't know why she had a debit card issue. She withdrew every penny out of her account like everybody else. But every month she'd come in, my roommate got a hold of my card, and I hope they're not using their money, but you don't have anything set up. Finally, after seeing her for 6 months straight, I finally just said, look, you probably don't need a debit card. You only deal in cash. And I don't mean to say she was a horrible customer. She was not. She was always nice. She even wanted a hug, which she had it rough. Some of the people that take advantage of older people or people that are slow are horrible pieces of shit. Because she didn't have a car, and to get a ride there, she paid that person $100 to drive her 5 miles to the bank. $100. And this was somebody that got $700 a month disability, and that person was taking a pretty good sized chunk of her money just because they were horrible people. I'm not saying they should have drove her for free, but I've told other people about this, and I had a friend who was like, well, man, I'd quit my job and take an extra day off and drive her to the bank on the first of the month for $50. So I'm not saying you should have done it for free, but just, you shouldn't have done that. And then another guy, he's an older man. He had a fair bit of money. He had a bunch of properties. He'd come in with his daughters saying his wife was after his money. Blah, blah, blah. His wife's trying to get his money. And this wasn't their mother. It was somebody else he married. They were out to get his money. They're out to get my money. I can't believe she's trying to get my money. But he'd come in with his wife from time to time. But his daughters would come in and go through complicated lengths to protect his money. And eventually somebody else I worked with, eventually you get tired of dealing with that like every couple days. We finally told him, if you're that worried about your wife, maybe you should get a divorce. Because every time you come in, you're more worried about protecting your money, which his wife really wasn't trying to get. But there were other people. There were plenty of people taking advantage of disabled people, old people, you name it. They were doing it. Because they had people that their checks were signed over to their relatives, and they'd come in with that person in the car and just take the money and keep it. And we would report it because elder abuse is a crime, but there's only so much we can do. We can tell, hey, this doesn't look right. Hey, this man that clearly has Alzheimer's is being taken advantage of by his niece well, let's call it in. And we did, and nothing would happen. So it was depressing in that regard. There were so many people that was the bad part, because there's only so much you could do. You couldn't help those people. And then there were the customers that came in with the stupid stuff. There's a lady that came in every day for 2 months to change her debit card code. Because you could change it, but you weren't supposed to change it every day. But she kept giving it to people, and we finally told her, like, ma'am, you're going to have to wait a week or a month. And we kind of lied, because people kind of believe whatever. We just said, well, I almost said the bank. The bank's not going to allow you to have a debit card if you keep changing your PIN, because all this does is throw up red flags. And so many fraud cases. People would come in with the most ridiculous stuff. Like, we'd open accounts, and their accounts would have fraudulent checks deposited in them. Oh, my car got stolen, and they got all my account information that I conveniently left in the car sitting open in a folder, and they got a hold of my debit card and my PIN number that I didn't have written down, and deposited those fake checks in my account, so it's not my fault. Because there were people online that would tell kids to, hey, deposit this fake check, we'll give you $200. Well, what happened was the checks would come back, and you'd have $1,600 negative on the account that you owed. Guess what? You got to pay that back. Because one thing they don't tell you about a bank is you have a banking credit score. You can't just go and play fast and loose with the banking system and just think, oh, I can just do whatever. I'll just let that account go negative there and charge off. No, other banks know what you're doing. You can't go to, like, say, Chase Bank and do that, and then try to go to, I don't know, Bank of America and do that. They won't let you. But people tried. They tried. And they come up with all kinds of, their car got stolen. And my manager didn't put up with that bullshit. He'd say, well, where's the police report if your car got stolen? Oh, well, I haven't done one yet. And how did they get your PIN number? He'd poke holes in those stories. Because they'd act like, oh, it wasn't my fault. And then people would do that. And if you're on an account with someone else, there's a rule called right of set-off, which means if one account owes money and you're on another account that has money, the bank has a right to take that money. So you had a lot of pissed off parents mad at their kids for pulling that, or in cases, kids mad at their parents because there were parents that screwed around. And there were all kinds of other people. I remember one time a man came in. He loaned his debit card to someone, and they rented a Metro truck. You know, one of those you rent, kind of like a U-Haul to move something. And they never returned it. So Metro's just like, oh, okay, keep the truck as long as you want. We're just going to charge you the daily rate. Instead of going to see the person who he lended the car to, he came to us and blamed us. It wasn't his fault. It was our fault for letting the money come out of his account. And he tried to do a fraud claim, and the fraud department, they've seen it all. They're not stupid. They said, sir, you said you gave her the card. You need to talk to that person, but he wanted to blame the bank. It was our fault. He blamed us. And there was nothing we could do because they kept charging it, and he kept not going to going to that person. And he finally was like, I'm going to close my account. Yeah, we really don't care. It'll probably get closed on its own because you keep getting charged. Because Metro will do that. Same with U-Haul. And then other people thought they could get slick if you just, like, oh, well, I left my debit card on the counter and my sister inconveniently took it and made charges. I want to get my money back. No. That's what's called friendly fraud. That means if you were dumb enough to leave your debit card sitting out and that other person got it, it's your fault. There's no fraud, because what usually would happen, they'd go buy stuff and then, oh, we'll report it as fraud. No, you can't fool the fraud department. That doesn't work. And if you do fool them, you won't fool them forever. Because they'll research it, they'll audit it, they'll look back, and they will find a hole in your plan. Because you can't cheat the bank. You can't kite, which is writing checks on accounts that don't have the money and keep them going. You can't do that in the modern age. You just can't. There are a lot of customers like that, and people would come in for loans, and we couldn't tell them not to apply. If you wanted to come and apply for a loan, it was, yeah, sure. But we could encourage them in the right direction, because I'd always ask their credit, and I get a lot of answers like, well, it's not too bad. It's like a 480. Oh, and you're trying to get $30,000? Okay, what we may need to do is to work on your credit, because if you got a 480, even my manager had trouble sugarcoating scores that low. He'd say, well, you better have good income. If you had anything below a 640, you were going to get turned down. Banks will not give you money when you need it. That's just how it is, unfortunately. But so many people came in like that. And we got paid quarterly based on loan volume individually, but we got $1 per $1,000 we got. And I'd say one loan in 20 got approved, because even people with decent credit, they would find something. And the underwriters, they were not looking at stuff again. So it's pretty tough out there at that bank, like to get a loan, and trying to explain to people that a decent credit score is not 480. It is not 540. Hell, it is not even 600. 600 is not good. I'd say the bare minimum score you need is, if you have a score good enough to purchase a home, you've got a decent credit score. Anything else below that, it just doesn't work. It's just how it is. Anyways, we had, like I told before, we had some customers that would come in late, things like that, and I had to work every other Saturday. And I hated that so much, because that will drive you up the wall, because you were there every other Saturday. And Saturdays were hit or miss. Because we work 9 to 1, you'd either have the door being knocked down all day, or you'd have nobody, then somebody come in at 12:58 with something stupid. Like I remember one time, it was after 1, and this lady had gotten an overdraft fee, and she was just so offended because she had so much money in all these accounts, and she did, but she didn't have enough money in that particular account, but she thought the others should make up for it. So she wanted to hang out a good 30 minutes and make us wait to close, so she could argue with me. When I told her I couldn't return the fee, she'd have to talk to my branch manager, because we had a system to return fees, but they were good for 1 or 2 a year. That was it. If you got more than 1 a year, you weren't getting it back. You could go over our heads, but you weren't getting it back. Period. Those fees existed for a reason. You pay for the overdraft privilege. It's not a, oh, I got that, please return it for me. No, it's something that's required. But she wasn't having it, and there's nothing that'll piss people off more than somebody that keeps you waiting after, especially over something stupid. Because if you're opening an account, doing a loan, doing a credit card application, fine. If you're doing business, but if you're just hanging out, camping out, wanting to make friends, don't do that. That makes you the worst. Because I had somebody come in late one time that worked at a fast food place, like right before we closed on Friday. We closed at 6 o'clock. I came in at 5:58 to open something. And like I said, it was business, but I was just like, why? You could have come in any time. I'm going to go to your work, camp out, and make a mess of all the booze. I never did, but it was frustrating. And other times, customers were so obsessed with anything that could happen to their stuff. I had a lady that wanted to open an account, and she wanted her kids as beneficiaries. I said, well, I'll put them on after I open the account. No, I want them on there now. I was like, well, I don't have their information. I'd have to start over. She refused to open the account, so I had to deal with that. Or people that didn't want to talk over the phone. They wanted to ask questions. Another time, a guy and his son came in, and his son was, I don't know, 20s and he worked as a nurse. He had a lot of money. And his son did a credit card application, got approved. That was a rarity, because he must have actually had decent credit. And his dad's like, well, will I be able to see the account? I said, well, no, sir, it's his card. Well, is there any way to get me added on there? I said, no, sir. And he was quite insistent. And his son was like 28 years old. All I thought was, does he shake your pecker when you go to pee, man? Does he have to do everything for you? Why does he need to be on the credit card? And so many people that thought they could just do whatever, just wanted to talk. And another old man, he died, God rest his soul, but he would come in and he'd want you to break down all of his charges from the last few days, because he came in fairly often. And if your total didn't match with his booklet to the penny, he wanted to fight. He's like, no, that doesn't work. My total doesn't work. We need to go over these charges. I said, our charges are not wrong. Like, the banking system isn't wrong. It was probably his math. His math would be off by pennies, but he'd want to stay in there and argue. And that's okay at first, but he'll drive you crazy after a while. It gets to where he'd come in and all of us would race each other to hide and bag. And another thing that was funny to me, people would call and be like, yeah, I talked to somebody the other day and we did such and such. I want to deal with them. I was like, oh, well, do you remember who you talked to? Oh, no. I said, well, it confused me how they didn't remember who they talked to, because I'm a 300-pound white guy. Okay. The person in the office next to me was a middle-aged black woman, and the guys across from me were both black, but one of them was light-skinned and one of them was dark-skinned, so I didn't get the confusion. How do you not remember who you talked to? Because if it was me, I'd remember. So it'd have to go through, I have to put them on hold and go talk to the people. Or, hey, did you talk to this John Smith guy yesterday? Yeah. Did it for 30 minutes. Well, he didn't remember who he talked to because it'd been such a long time that he got confused. And just stuff that would drive you crazy. And then I was up for whatever, so I would go work at other branches, and you got mileage, and that was fun. It was fun seeing the different types of branches, because one of them I went to, it was, I don't know how, but somehow it was a Spanish-speaking branch. I didn't speak a word. And that poor girl that worked there, she was bilingual. They would wait an hour to deal with her. They wouldn't deal with me. They would wait an hour to deal with her. So I didn't have a customer the whole day. They only wanted to deal with her, so there was nothing I could do. And then other places, just, I might go all day, because our branch was fairly steady busy. But other, like, high net worth branches, I'd go the whole day without seeing anybody. Well, other than that, it was a good place to work. It's just, by the end, I was looking for something else, looking for something closer to home. I was commuting a long way. My life had changed. And the commute just, it took it out of me. I was commuting 80 hours or 80 miles one way, and that will come out of your soul. I don't care how everybody says, oh, it's not that bad. No, when you lose 3 hours a day to nothing, it's awful. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And you want a shorter commute, because that drive, I don't care if you think it's zen time, it gets old. It gets old, and it will drive you crazy. But I end up looking for something else, and I'll talk about that later.